Meet Keel, a clueless-looking barbarian with the mind of a genius. In a world he once dreamed of before his reincarnation, his wits will outshine any blade. And this is where his legend begins. Amidst a relentless heavy snowfall, a group of armed figures urge their horse-drawn carriage forward. Mark, with axe in hand, converses with another figure in the snow who warns about the deadly cold and the need for more fur, then acknowledges that the necessary precautions are already being taken. As Chris voices his deep concern to Captain Harold amidst the snow, he insists that no reward is worth this suicidal endeavor. As he exclaimed about the insanity of crossing the white snowfield, the captain sternly looked downwards, silencing him and reminding everyone that they had all agreed. Chris insisted they never knew the conditions would be this brutal. Meanwhile, inside the carriage, an older man in a suit, Mylina's servant, shivered and cursed the brutal cold. As his gloved hand moved, the servant cleared his throat with a sharp ahem. He looked towards someone, urgently asking if Miss was all right. This is Mylina, smiles as she declares she's fine, though internally she curses, fearing she'll freeze to death. Inside the carriage, the servant angrily cursed the rude bastards, while a man remained partially visible outside in the snow. Mylina spoke to her servant, defending the guards and cautioning him not to be too harsh, as they were the only ones willing to escort them through the treacherous white snowfield. Looking concerned, Mylina declared that the person outside looked absolutely frozen. Amidst the brutal snow, one man strikes another, who cries out in pained protest. The servant emphatically refused, warning Mylina of the inherent dangers lurking on the white snowfield. Looking down, she questioned if those inherent dangers were indeed monsters. An emperor harbored a grand ambition to conquer the perilous white snowfield. The emperor, accompanied by armored soldiers, proceeded deeper into the snowy mountain landscape. The landscape changed to a fiery, apocalyptic scene, with a solitary figure resembling the emperor emerging amidst the empire's collapse and his return. When he returned, he keeps mentioning that the white snowfield had more dangerous thing inside, not only the monster, but the barbarian who lives at this place. And this person isn't an ordinary one because he even dared to live in a place like this. Mylina's servant declaring the monstrous threats were surely just a legend. Mylina gazed out, as the unsettling truth was confirmed that the emperor's descriptions of the white snowfield's creatures were accurate, most of them having been discovered. Mylina's servant awkwardly smiles as he speaks, confidently claiming that no one had ever reported seeing a barbarian. Looking down in contemplation, Mylina acknowledged the truth of her servant's confident claim. And so, the deeper history of the treacherous white snowfield was revealed. As Captain Harold spoke to Mark in the snowy environment, he warned of something lurking outside, prompting Mark to intently question what it was. His intense, focused eyes strained to comprehend what lurked beyond. Straining their eyes in the vast, snowy landscape, they tried to discern the distant figure, but Captain Harold declared he could not see clearly. His face etched with distress, he declared that he had good news and bad news. Amidst the brutal snow, Mark impatiently demanded the news. Then Captain Harold revealed the good news was its small size before hesitating to deliver the bad news, which is this person seems coming right to them. As the distant figure rapidly approached, Captain Harold, Mylina and the others both reacted with alarmed expressions. Amidst the snowy, misty landscape, Captain Harold questioned in disbelief if the approaching figure was a human. They observe him, but they are surprised he is barely naked, only covering in fur while most of his upper body were exposed in killing cold. As this man approaching, his immense aura were filling the air. But they slowly realizing by looking at him, he seems a barbarian the way he looks. Yet, this mysterious man hadn't say a single thing while approaching. Facing the group of soldiers in the snowfield, Keel declared he took a stroll to escape other barbarians and was surprised to encounter outsiders. Keel smiles, calling their unexpected encounter a stroke of luck and extending a greeting. Keel noticed the wagons, asked if they were traders, to which Captain Harold hesitantly confirmed. Keel, accompanied by fellow mercenaries Mylina and Chris, confronted the group in the snow, prompting Captain Harold to declare they were clearly caravan protectors, a point Mark hesitantly affirmed. He contemplatively suggested they turn back, yet quickly added that he doubted they would. They felt humiliated for Keel looking down on them. He then looked towards a fancy wagon, directly asking if their employer was within. She became partially visible from within the wagon, reacting with a clear gasp of surprise and concern. Captain Harold reacted with intense shock as after hearing it too. Keel grinned mischievously, placing a hand under his chin as he casually proposed that he too would love to be hired. With Keel and Chris looking shocked, Captain Harold burst out in disbelief, demanding to know what he meant. Grinning confidently, Keel boldly asked if his meaning was unclear. He clarified his offer to help them cross the snowfield. A worried Captain Harold wrestled with the shocking idea of a legendary barbarian asking for work, wondering if that was truly all he wanted, and then cautiously asked if he wasn't hostile after all. He smiled confidently, asserting that if he were hostile, they would all be dead already. Captain Harold paused in concerned silence as another man stood partially visible behind him. As Captain Harold stands, Mark looks hesitantly questioning, "Captain?" Therefore, he goes to Mylina to inform her. With a sharp knock, Captain Harold urgently questioned if she had heard that. Responding to him, Mylina looked up and confirmed she had heard what Keel said. Captain Harold vehemently declared that Keel was asking to be hired as a mercenary. He urgently questioned her what they would do in response to the extraordinary offer. Captain Harold then questioned her on what she thought would happen if they fought, before asking if they wanted his personal take. She left speechless for a while, thinking the possibilities that might happen if it really does happen. Mylina looked up and decisively declared her understanding, stating that they should accept Keel's offer. Captain Harold spoke with a determined gaze, dutifully confirming, "Yes, ma'am." As three armored figures, including Captain Harold, ran through the snowy forest, he exclaimed that Keel had accepted. He smiled after hearing it. Keel triumphantly declared the news was wonderful. Captain Harold and Chris all look surprised or dismayed, with him letting out a sharp exclamation. Captain Harold looks up at Keel, who looms over him, utterly bewildered as he cries out in shock. Standing confidently and looking down at Captain Harold, Keel asserted there was no need to be scared, as they were just the employees. Determined, he questioned if they needed to speak with their employer directly. Captain Harold delivering a pointed warning against trying anything funny. Keel replied that he was been warned. Captain Harold paused, looking towards Keel, who subtly smiled. Mark nervously questioned if it was truly okay to let him meet their employer, to which Captain Harold's voice replied that their employer had approved it. The random soldier expressed further concern to Captain Harold, wondering if they, as mere mercenaries, shouldn't try to stop Keel, prompting Harold to question in turn if he meant to stop him. He found it funny to stop Keel, as he knew he's a huge threat in this place. Inside the carriage, the servant was so shocked by her decision. With a directness that cut through the scene, Keel inquired if he might enter. Mylina's servant abruptly lets out a startled scream of surprise or fear. Mylina's servant watched as she granted Keel permission to enter. Keel was prominently situated within the snowy environment. Keel then spoke, his words cutting through the tension to ask if the other had calmed down. Keel's voice echoed, assuring the others he had no intention of causing them harm, but Mylina's servant, consumed by fear and agitation, screamed at him not to lie, calling him a monster. Stunned, Mylina realized the legendary barbarian stood right before her. With Keel now relaxing on a couch, Mylina, seated across from him while her servant remained silent nearby, nervously offered a greeting, which he promptly returned. Glancing to the window, he casually noted the surprising warmth of their carriage. Pondering his observation about the surprising warmth, she then revealed it was all meticulously maintained by magic. Facing away, Keel confirmed the magic revelation with a casual, as expected, while Mylina, observing him curiously, offered a vague explanation about the nature of their world. Looking out the window at the snowy landscape, he warned that the dangerous area left her little chance of passing safely with those mercenaries, and Keel, his voice ringing with conviction through the surprisingly warm, snow-laden air, declared that he would protect their lives. However, Keel revealed there was one condition, leaving Mylina surprised, while her servant watched with equal surprise and concern. Mylina was surprised about the condition, and immediately demanded to know what he wanted in return for her protection. Keel then revealed his condition. He wanted knowledge from outside the snowfield. He firmly stated that the information Mylina possessed was exactly what he desired as his condition, then smiled confidently with arms crossed, emphasizing his demand for knowledge from beyond the snowfield. Remaining still, she continued to reflect on Keel's surprising demand for knowledge from beyond the snowfield. He then smiled, assuring her that she would lose nothing by accepting his condition. Mylina looked on thoughtfully, questioning if she even had a choice to begin with. Looking down, she conceded, accepting his audacious demand. With her acceptance confirmed, he looked down with a subtle smile. Keel then declared his satisfaction and asked for her name, while a startled older man was partially visible in the background. She introduced herself as Mylina of the Akasha family. Keel smiled broadly, introducing himself and declaring his pleasure to work with her. Here's a little flashback about Keel. He was a guy who longed for a fantasy world. But he woke up one day to find himself as a barbarian in a snowfield, and he had no time to figure out why. The only things that existed here were a terrible cold and endlessly strong monsters, and he led a tribe in the snowfield and hunted to survive. For countless years, he have constantly tried to get out of this terrible snowfield. As he stood, a system interface shimmered into existence, announcing, "Quest incomplete, you can leave the snowfield upon completing the quest." Just as he was about to give up on everything, he don't know why people would willingly come to a place this terrible, but sometimes people from the outside would show up. Then a realization hits him, that the world outside this terrible snowfield was the world of fantasy and magic that he had so longed for, and it was a fantasy world. From then on, he began to act in earnest, not just to survive. He trampled monsters and solved the quests given to him one by one to get out of the snowfield. Keel's deep thoughts revealed that while he was once trapped in the snowfield, any information from the outside had been incredibly precious to him. Keel thought back, musing that most humans he'd encountered there had either panicked and drawn a blade or gone half crazy. Looking down, he pondered that he had finally found someone he could talk to, wondering how long it had been since he last conversed with a civilized person. He mused further that speaking with someone cultured felt like mental healing, after so long among only uneducated barbarians. He looks intently, questioning if they were transporting weapons. Mylina, surprised, confirmed, hesitantly asking, "Yes, how did you?" Responding directly, he revealed he simply heard the sharp steel from the wagons, confirming it was hard not to know. Hesitantly, she clarified that the Empire and the Kingdom were currently embroiled in war, and understanding dawned on her as she acknowledged that the outside world wasn't completely peaceful either. Mylina explained that the Great Empire was advancing with overwhelming force, yet the Kingdom refused to yield, affirming that valiant sword masters and heroes were safeguarding the border. His gaze sharpened as he vehemently questioned the very mention of heroes and sword masters, pressing further by demanding to know what kind of power these heroes wielded. Mylina then questioned Keel if he was perhaps unaware of mysticism, leading him to reveal he had never been outside their current location, and she conceded she didn't know the full details either. Only a select few can truly sense or wield mysticism, a power that bestows upon them varying 5 ranks of strength. First, the 3rd rank. This refers to those who can sense the power of mysticism. And the 2nd rank, from the 2nd rank, these are people who can use the power of mysticism. Next is the 1st rank. These are those people who can materialize the power of mysticism into mana or aura, and people like knights, wizards, and elementals usually belong to the 1st rank. The other is the transcendent. These are people who can dominate mysticism and use it freely, capable of splitting the sky and earth. The sword master belongs to this rank. Lastly, the hero monster who can go beyond dominating mysticism and influence the world itself. A hero is a legendary being in and of itself. Mylina contemplated that the very quantification of their strength proved its existence, with even a 3rd-rank individual considered formidable within a small territory. Mylina, surprised as Keel's, declared his desire to meet them, causing her to react with a confusion. Keel revealed his grim realization that he could no longer remember how long he had been trapped, recognizing with stark clarity that he had only ever been desperately trying to survive. Keel surveyed the vast snowfield, realizing he was trapped within this fantasy world and yet he couldn't escape. But he was determined that he really wanted to get out of this snowfield. Keel's vehement rejection thundered with a single, absolute no. Turning his gaze away, Keel stated with fierce resolve that he must escape. With his vehement rejection of being trapped still echoing, Keel stood in the snowy landscape beside Mylina and a waiting horse-drawn carriage, when Mylina directly asked if he was a barbarian. Keel responded that she could indeed call him a barbarian, adding that her expression seemed to confirm her prior knowledge of his existence. She confirmed the existence of a legend. Keel, reacting with surprise, immediately questioned if the legend Mylina had mentioned could possibly be about him. A surprised Mylina gasped, then questioned if he truly didn't know. A sudden, stark blankness descended, leaving only a void where answers should have been. The stark blankness was suddenly punctuated by a jarring blast of sound effects. As Keel remembered the Emperor that he met before, Keel questioned if that man was truly the Emperor, while Mylina confessed she had only considered him a lunatic. Keel dismissed his question, as the Emperor confirmed the legend was likely accurate, explaining that something of that nature had arrived in this place a long time ago. Keel continued, observing the number of wagons and deducing they were transporting a large quantity of weapons, before questioning why they would specifically pass through the snowfield. Her voice continued, cryptically stating, "We." Mylina then concluded her thought, revealing they desperately needed a vast sum of money. She looked down somberly as the desperate need for a vast sum of money weighed on her, when Keel's voice cut in, demanding to know the reason. She revealed that their family has been in commerce for generations. "We've accumulated quite a bit of wealth, but due to sabotage from jealous rivals, they were currently heavily in debt, and this expedition is to prevent the downfall of their family." He contemplated the expedition, musing that it was meant to resolve their debt. Keel then questioned her, deducing that she intended to sell the weapons to the kingdom at war with the Empire, which surprised her as she confirmed his deduction and wondered how he knew. As she looked down, he reasoned that her earlier statement about the Empire advancing with sheer numbers meant they would have no issues with weapon supply. Keel added that if the Empire didn't need weapons, the kingdom certainly would, since low supply and high demand would drive up the price. Thoughtfully analyzing the situation, he deduced that even without knowing the exact value of goods outside, the sheer quantity of weapons must be worth a great deal, making the risk of traversing the snowfield entirely justifiable. Keel continued to speak, deducing that since they were going through the trouble of crossing the white snowfield, there seemed no other way to get to the kingdom without passing through it. Keel inquired if her territory's border touched the Empire, a deduction Mylina readily confirmed. Mylina's face shifted with surprise and contemplation as she inwardly dismissed the legendary Barbarian as an uneducated savage, silently wondering who he truly was, before asking aloud, "Who are you?" She snapped back in sudden, as the carriage moved just a sudden inaction. When they looked back, they are startled of what they saw. However, Keel remained calm, even he knew there was a threat incoming. Keel urgently declared they had uninvited guests. In a snowy, misty landscape strewn with debris, a massive dark, amorphous monster loomed with sinister red eyes as Mark, flanked by his two armed companions, pressed forward toward it. Mark's eyes widened in shock, his mouth hanging open as Captain Harold stammered in alarm, while the two companions behind him recoiled in distress. Mylina's face contorted with horror at the immense threat, her eyes wide as she stammered in disbelief. "A black slime?" Keel simply wondering aloud if black slime was what the immense creature was truly called. Mylina, looking surprised, confirms the immense creature is a monster recorded in the archives, then asks if Keel also knows what it is. As Mylina questioned the archives, the male stood intently within a dark, glowing environment etched with ancient script, revealing that while many strong adventurers challenged the white snowfield, few ever returned alive, and among the creatures they documented, the black slime appeared most often. Amused, Keel confirmed his knowledge of the creatures, casually deeming them chewy little things and a decent treat, while Mylina, utterly surprised and somewhat disgusted, questioned if he actually consumed them. Keel then suggested they catch some of the black slimes if she was thinking of trying one, to which Mylina reacted with immediate dismay, stammering out a denial. As a monstrous entity emerged, even Keel was stunned speechless while Mylina cried out his name in alarm. Keel was left in confused silence as she desperately called out his name. His mouth opened as he declared he had made a pact. Keel declaring he had promised to protect their lives and would only move if there was real danger. She looked on with a surprised expression, questioning what he meant. Keel's voice floated through the air, dismissively stating that they could easily handle the creature themselves. With a confident gaze, he remained assured of their ability to manage the situation, smirking as he declared that, more importantly, he needed to gauge the level of strength out here for himself. As the immense entity radiated intense purple power, the two figures watched it loom overhead. Captain Harold shouts for shields to be raised. The shielder blocked a powerful purple energy attack with a large shield. Streaks of power flared around his feet as he stood resolute in the snow after the attack. He is flung backward by the powerful force, dropping his shield and crying out in pain. However, Mark took this opportunity to strike forward. But unfortunately, his attack wasn't enough, making him to get strike back, Chris cursing and questioning what the hell this monster truly was. As the black slime unleashes a piercing scream, Captain Harold readies his sword. He quickly instructs his allies to scatter and coordinate, warning that black slime can only move in straight lines. As another man reacted, Chris also confirmed the instruction. With their plan affirmed, the man in the green cape with a fur trim held his spear, ready for combat. A powerful force impacts the snowy ground, sending debris splashing into the air. As the large, shadowy purple creature unleashed its pursuit, the man in the green cape desperately fled across the snowy landscape, the black slime letting out a terrifying roar. Responding to the terrifying roar, someone gripped a wooden spear radiating with green energy, poised for action. The spear only pierced through the black slime, making 0 damage. The black slime began to rampage again. Chris, now wielding a glowing sword, aggressively charged through the black slime, demanding himself to keep attacking. Captain Harold successfully landed his strike with sheer speed. Captain Harold, looking determined, received vital tactical information that regular attacks were useless and the monster's hidden core was their true target, swiftly acknowledging the strategy. The rapid movement of their ongoing assault left multiple glowing slashes cutting through the black slime. Captain Harold held his glowing sword vertically upwards, preparing for an attack. Captain Harold unleashed a powerful downward slash, generating a bright burst of turquoise energy. His powerful slash unveiled red crystalline that seems to be the core of the black slime. As the monster dissolved, its purple, amorphous form dissipated into the snowy environment, leaving behind red crystalline fragments. One of the guards reacted with surprise, asking, "We did it?" While 2 others in similar cloaks became visibly excited. With the monster seemingly vanquished, Mylina appeared surprised and slightly worried. Keel gasped in disbelief that they had actually succeeded. Just as they believed victory was theirs, a white wolf-like monster suddenly ambushed them from behind in the snowy environment, triggering a frantic cry of "Stop!" Another monster? One of them urgently commanded to aim for the creature's neck. So they swings their weapon, his expression determined. Mark relentlessly pressed his attack, striking at the wolf beast with his weapon, while the creature roared, its mouth gaping wide in a fierce display of aggression. Chris took this opportunity to strike the wolf beast while it was off guard. Standing with the other mercenaries in the snowy landscape, a soldier dismissively questioned Captain Harold about the unimpressive nature of the white snowfield, to which Harold, looking surprised, replied that perhaps the rumors had been exaggerated. He spoke firmly, warning them not to let their guard down, and emphasizing they were not even halfway through. As Harold cautioned they were only halfway through, the mercenaries muttered still, some questioning the barbarian's rumored strength, while another, hooded, doubted he was more than a legend. As Keel stood there, mercenaries openly scoffed, questioning why he, supposedly at the very bottom of the white snowfield's hierarchy, was clinging to them for protection. Captain Harold met their skepticism head-on, questioning if they shouldn't at least verify the barbarian's true strength. Mylina's gaze sharpened, a soft, questioning sound escaping her lips. Keel dropped his gaze, offering no immediate response. The mercenaries' voices suddenly cut through the air, demanding a word with Mylina. Her voice sharp, she demanded to know what needed verification. A mercenary with a distinct figure visible behind him declared they had put their lives on the line for this mission, adding that as professional mercenaries, they were simply upholding the contract they had made. She, continuing the conversation, swiftly affirmed her profound gratitude for their acceptance of the request, insisting she had always appreciated their efforts. After acknowledging their valor, one of the guards declared that one crucial detail still troubled her. The crucial detail troubling Mylina was bluntly addressed by the man, who questioned whether the barbarian had even fought once, to which she could only partially respond. "That's..." Mylina articulated their desire to confirm if the barbarian, prompting the mercenary to assertively finish the statement, demanding to know if he truly deserved the special treatment he was getting. Her expression shifts to surprise and wariness as she questions if they're truly seeking that kind of confirmation. Mylina's was even surprised when Captain Harold approached at her. Captain Harold explained that he tried to stop them, but they wouldn't listen. Keel smirks, knowing that they are challenging to test his strength, which he don't mind. But Keel confidently know, this isn't the right time to show what he can do. Keel came outside the carriage, looked up to announce they had visitors ahead, only to immediately question the very words he was spouting. As a red glow signaled an unseen presence, the cloaked figures reacted with distress while a serpent beast announced the arrival of fragile mortals from the outside, ominously adding that it had been a while since it enjoyed a delicacy, as the male and the others continued to recoil from its formidable presence. As the serpent beast continued its ominous declaration, the guards let out a grunt, holding their sword over a surprised. As they turn around, a monstrous white reptilian creature with large fangs and a long tongue opened its mouth wide, its red eyes fixed on them, demanding the pitiful mortal scream. Mylina screams in distress, clutching her head as the screech was so painful to her ears. Mark, gritting his teeth with an axe in hand, fought alongside another person wielding a staff, his mind screaming. Keel proclaiming the others as his guests and ordering an unseen entity to retreat. A colossal white serpentine creature with red eyes glared down at its target, furiously demanding, "You, why are you here?" Then, with its tongue flicking and eyes burning red, the serpent beast roared if they had forgotten the rules of the snowfield, continuing its enraged explanation by detailing the sacred laws that governed leaving one's tribe's territory. Keel defiantly retorted that it was none of the beast's business. The colossal serpent beast, now identifying itself as Snake, loomed over Keel in the snow, internally roaring its name and demanding how anyone dared to give orders to a being promised immutability. He, his power surging, prepared to punch, asserting the creature needed a beating. Keel strikes downwards with a bare hand amidst a burst of powerful strike. The serpent beast feels the pain all over his body after Keel landing his punch. Their clash culminated in a massive blue energy explosion that rippled outwards across the surface. Through the lingering smoke from the colossal explosion, they gritted his teeth in distress, letting out a pained cry. From the central point of their monumental clash, a powerful blue energy blast erupted, scattering debris in every direction. She covers herself from the force made of the collision. Keel asserted that serpent beast, groaning in pain on the snowy ground, was the kind of guy who only listened after a good thrashing. Mylina looked down at Keel, uttering his name in disbelief. His eyes gleaming with fierce resolve, he declared he would finish this up, adding with his lower face visible that it wouldn't take long. He prepared himself to lunge forward. Keel's attack erupted in an explosive burst of powerful force, transforming him into an indistinct, distorted blur amidst the surging impact. He further concentrated his power as he prepared for the next strike. As his next strike landed, a massive explosion erupted from the ground, radiating light and particles. Mylina and her servant left speechless of what they just witnessed. With arms crossed, Keel firmly states that trusting a stranger isn't easy. Later on, they continue their way to their journey. Mylina's servant clenched his fists and gritted his teeth, letting out a pained grunt as snow dusted his shoulders. Keel looked straight ahead with a neutral expression, remaining silent before suddenly interjecting that he had a question. As Mylina directly asked her what it was, Keel asserted that her attire and speech showed she was far more than a simple family representative, then fixed his gaze on her, demanding to know why she was personally undertaking such a dangerous expedition. Flustered by Keel's intense questioning, she could only manage a drawn-out well. She finally revealed her true identity, declaring herself the first daughter of Velika, a concubine of Sir Kazak Akasha. Mylina clasped her hands together as Keel, in disbelief, demanded if she truly meant a second wife, to which she confirmed with a simple, direct yes. She then revealed the full story, explaining that the person had been brought for a political marriage only to be used and abandoned, describing the mother holding a baby as a pitiful figure with no real power. With her hands resting on her lap, Mylina began to speak about her mother and herself, explaining in her monologue that they were family in name only and, in reality, treated like servants. Looking down with a hint of regret, she admitted she hadn't intended to reveal so much, then firmly declared that she had personally volunteered for this expedition. Keel reacted with a surprised query about her volunteering for the expedition, which she then firmly confirmed. She spoke, looking to the right, explaining that even though the expedition was dangerous, someone had to be an example. Keel declared his understanding, affirmed her cleverness. Keel further declared she possessed great ambition and was greedy, leaving her surprised and speechless. Mylina were startled by what he just said to her. Then the guards suddenly cheered, which caught their attention. They heard that they have been arrived at their destination. A scenic path wound through the vibrant green, rocky landscape, now starkly clear. Mylina thanked Keel for helping them, and when he questioned their return as she stood with her servant, she boldly declared they would journey through the Empire. Though her servant worried they would be empty-handed after selling the weapons, she confidently assured that crossing the border would not be difficult. Mylina continued, declaring, "You said I was clever and ambitious," then, startled, clutched her outfit and demanded to know what that cryptic statement truly meant. Keel confirmed the claim that she was both clever and ambitious, which she wondered what he meant by this. Keel stated that her family was once highly respected, but had fallen into great turmoil due to a lack of funds, referencing her status as a concubine's daughter, while the mysterious voice pressed on, suggesting she could personally forge a path to salvation for her family on the brink of ruin. He asked her if who do she think the people below will trust and follow, since her goal is to seize real power in the family. He fixed them with a challenging gaze, directly asking if he was wrong. Mylina's thoughtful expression revealed her silent acknowledgement of a perfect answer, before she vocally declared, "No." Her inner conviction affirmed it was the right answer, and as Keel appeared alongside a character in traditional attire, he mused that it was a common tale for a concubine's child to embrace perilous challenges in pursuit of family inheritance. Therefore, she realized that he's a clever barbarian, and he's not like those half-witted know-it-alls. While contemplating about Keel's strength, she frankly asked if he was think of leaving the snowfield. Then out of nowhere, she asked if he could come with her. Keel declined as he reasoned he had some things to do. Mylina then poses a pivotal question, asking if they will accept the jewelry. She held out the golden piece of jewelry, instructing them to show it to the Akasha family, should they ever venture outside and seek them. Keel declared that if it was a gift, he would gladly accept it. Her servant spoke, thanking Keel and hoping to meet again someday. Later on, they finally split their ways. Years drifted by. He was glad that he finally escaped from the snowfield after meeting all the conditions. The system confirmed the reward payment, clearly reaffirming that all conditions had been met, then materialized to indicate permission to finally leave the snowfield. Keel immediately left the area as he was excited to step forward, as this was the first step for his goals. This is the way to get through the fantasy world he have always wanted. Keel closes his eyes, smiling as he inhales the lush green world's scent, savoring the fresh grass while another nearby detects only the smell of beasts. Keel looked up towards the bright, green environment, appreciating the unique scents he could never experience back in the snowfield, finding it quite nice. He smiles broadly, confirming his profound appreciation for the vibrant new world. Facing the massive, icy blue mountain under a bright, drizzling sky, he shouted his disdain for the damn snowfield, vowing never to return. As the vibrant green world faded to black, only floating leaves remained, signaling a journey onward. As the vibrant green world faded to black, a new saga's title and creator's names illuminated the growing darkness. Keel realizes it was fierce desire, not mere will, that let him survive the snowfield's hellish grip. Looking out at the vibrant land and distant mountains, he voices a question. He observes faint glowing presences in the distance, realizing there's a specific spot where they're gathering. As the magical journey continued, the scanlation group's credit emerged for a fleeting moment. He smiles, identifying the distant presences as a village, and expressing his excitement to finally see a civilized town in this new world. Keel, lost in thought about barbarians, recalled his futile attempts to explain the importance of shelter to them, as they merely blinked blankly and remained clueless. Keel longed for the comfort of a well-built human settlement, his mind racing over how to introduce himself. Still walking, Keel concluded his mental rehearsal, resolving to act gentlemanly regardless of his chosen introduction. Out of nowhere, a man extended his hand and loudly proclaimed, "Dear Elf villagers." The elf village chief declared that this vibrant land would now be their new home. As elf village chief proclaimed this vibrant land would now be their new home, he observed a group of smiling elf-like people, including families, gathered in a grassy area filled with flowers. Standing on a massive fallen tree trunk, the elf village chief gestured to the crowd below, commanding them to unpack everything. Suddenly, someone came approach at him, so he immediately asked this man what his business. The elf wondered if this place is really safe, which the elf village chief responded is safe. He explained that this place is extremely remote area and humans cannot reach it. An elf woman expressed her concern to the elf village chief about snowfield monsters appearing too close, but he quickly reassured him that it was fine. He elaborated on their safety measures, confidently stating that nothing from the snowfield had emerged in thousands of years and that a barrier was set up just in case. The elf village chief believed the barrier concealed their presence, making the area seem like an ordinary forest. As ancient elven magic scrolls were displayed, he recalled the months spent crafting it from fragments of lost knowledge, confident no outsider could reach them while it stood. Still concerned, elf village chief reminded them that even if monsters appeared, they had Her Majesty to rely on. he reassures them, emphatically declaring that not even the snowfield monsters could lay a hand on their queen. Seemingly confused about the barrier, he questioned if there was something there. As he walked away through tall green grass in the forest, Keel wondered aloud how much further he had to go. He looked surprised, a bewildered question as he noticed someone. A small child elf cautiously looked around, that seems lost from the woods. Keel looked intently, questioning if he had truly found an elf. Keel looked surprised, exclaiming that he had truly found a real elf, one of the races most often imagined in fantasy. Keel exclaimed in surprise at encountering one so soon. Touching his chin with a satisfied smile, he declared himself incredibly lucky, knowing all he had endured was finally worth it. The small child elf cried out in fear, completely lost and unsure of what to do, realizing she had wandered too far. The small child sat in the grass, looking startled. Intense shock and fear seized her. Because of Keel's appearance, she got startled by his immense body and muscles, making him look like monster. The child elf looked up at Keel as he extended a hand towards her. The small child elf recoiled in fear, stumbling backward. Keel kneels in the grass, silently cradling the small child elf, now unconscious. As Keel's eyes are shown, he internally muses about the child having passed out before they could properly talk, contemplating if he should simply bring her back to the village. Looking down at the unconscious child, Keel thought that, since myths painted elves as a peaceful and good race, returning the child might earn him a warm welcome. Imagining their smiling faces, he wondered what their hospitality would truly be like. With a slight smile, Keel inwardly expressed his eager anticipation for what was to come. With a gentle smile, he held the small, sleeping child. While still cradling the small child, he wore a confused expression, reacting to the unseen voices that shrieked about human presence. An elf man with a spear, accompanied by another male and a female elf, confronted Keel and the child, demanding to know his identity and how he had breached their protective barrier. Keel realized this was not going as he had hoped. An elf woman cried out in distress, screaming for her child. The elf woman cried out in disbelief, questioning how a human could have entered their untouched land. The elf village chief, stunned, insisted the barrier should have been intact. The elf village chief exclaimed in disbelief, demanding to know how, as another elf urgently informed him there was a crack in the barrier. Keel attempted to clarify he was not an enemy, but the elf fiercely threatened to pursue him to the ends of the earth if he did not return the child. The elf village chief vehemently proclaimed that their location had been compromised. The elf village chief and 3 other elves reacted in alarm as he stated that only a fully prepared human could have breached their barrier, crafted from ancient elven secrets. He then urgently demanded to know how long their pursuers had been tracking them. Keel, realizing the elves viewed him as a kidnapper, knew he had to immediately address the severe misunderstanding. The child elf, now awake, recoils in silent terror. The child elf closed its eyes, recoiling in silent terror. As she woke up, was surprised and confused when Keel told her to go on and return with her people. Despite Keel's attempts to ease the situation, the small elf child remained distressed. Once again, she got frightened at Keel's appearance. The small elf child's face crumpled in distress, eyes squeezed shut as tears streamed down. The child elf fled from Keel towards her mother, leaving him to wonder if his face was truly that scary. As he contemplated, Keel mused that his face had seemed decent enough back in the snowfield. Facing the adult elves, he mused that he had, after all, returned the child. Then, addressing them firmly, he declared he was not their enemy. The elf village chief swiftly announced that the hostage had been freed, then ordered an attack as an elf readied their arrows. An elf's hands tightly pulled back a bowstring, poised to launch arrows. With a sharp command of fire, the elf village chief unleashed a volley of glowing arrows into the sky. As they rained down, Keel looked distressed, questioning if they had heard a word he said. Keel contemplated the mythical nature of elves, pondering what the legends truly claimed. The elves were famed as a gentle, righteous race who cherished nature and sought peace, yet Keel couldn't help but think that the real elves were violent and savage. Keel concluded that elves, as a race bound to nature, lived by the law of the survival of the fittest, far from peaceful. In such a world, he found their brutality entirely understandable. As glowing arrows poured from the sky, Keel realized this was the harsh reality before him. Amid the growing storm, he simply murmured, "HM." Jagged thoughts from the elf village chief questioned Keel's artifact, while others urged a continued, relentless attack, believing he must have limits. He gestures with a hand, as he commands them to calm down. His hands clasped together, and a powerful force suddenly erupted pushed over him. His reality-rending purple power formed a field, only for a powerful force to violently impact it. The elf clenched his teeth in anguish, letting out a pained cry as the attack struck. Nearby, two men, one with light hair and pointed ears, the other dark-haired, reacted to the powerful force that slammed into Keel. The powerful impact hurled people and debris across the landscape amid terrified screams. The man cried out in pain as he was flung through the air, the force still scattering debris over the devastated ground. The forces continued their dynamic clash, heralding the official commencement of this brutal saga. The elf village chief cried out in shock. "What is this?" startled after witnessing what Keel did. Standing in the newly formed crater, Keel declared he was not their enemy. Looking up in surprise, he wondered if he had misjudged his strength a bit. The brutal saga continued as a fiery arrow lashed out, striking Keel's immediate vicinity. As the fiery arrow approaches, Keel turns around. The fiery impact culminated in a massive explosion, sending debris flying across the landscape. The elves looked on in utter shock as the fiery explosion consumed the background, leaving one to question what had just transpired. From the aftermath of the colossal explosion, long, golden blonde hair billowed, signaling a new, unknown force. The female elf looks up in surprise as the injured elf village chief urgently calls out, "Your Majesty." The elf queen stood on a cliff, demanding to know what was happening. The elf village chief explains to their queen that they have been attacked by a human. An elf woman named Marsyria looked on with concern, realizing the prophesied event had finally come to pass. Still gripped by worry, she declared that even their sanctuary was no longer safe. Keel emerged from the smoky aftermath, raising a hand to halt the haze as he called, "Wait!" Standing unharmed amid the chaos, he urged them to hear his story. Marsyria's eyes widened in utter shock as she processed his improbable survival. The elf village chief screamed in disbelief, his mind reeling at the impossible. Still reeling in disbelief, the elf village chief questioned how he had withstood the queen's direct blow and remained standing. Marsyria, clutching her bow, confronted Keel and vehemently demanded to know if he too was a powerful enemy intent on harming them. She gazed with disdain, utterly convinced that humans were truly vile creatures. As Marsyria drew an arrow onto her bow, she powerfully proclaimed herself queen of the leaf tribe, whose leaves turned brown with the seasons. With a stern expression, she looked down and accused him, human. Fixing her gaze on her target, she drew back the glowing arrow, ready to release its power. With a fierce expression, she vowed he would pay dearly for daring to covet them. Surprised, Keel asked if they couldn't even talk despite sharing the same language. He wondered if she was ignoring him, or if relations between humans and elves were really this strained. A dark, shadowy wolf-like creature appeared, musing that its situation was simply unavoidable. Keel, radiating a purple aura, fixed his gaze on the beast, his thoughts declaring, "One thing I learned in the snowfield." Keel's unwavering resolve was clear as he thought that if they wouldn't listen, he would simply hit them until they did. Marsyria poised for the next strike. She looked determined, ready to unleash her power amidst the swirling magical energy. She shoots her arrow with a powerful burst of energy. Keel left unfazed by her powerful shot. As he prepared to make them listen, Keel's fist began to glow with intense purple energy. When her attack hits Keel's powerful strike, a burst of energy erupted. Forcing the energy goes back to Marsyria. Because of how strong Keel was, he was able to dispel her attack and managed to get through it. As her attack deflected, the energy was now approaching her. Keel realized that he just used too much force. Because of that, the force that Keel deflected had been blasted. Amidst the newly devastated landscape, the female elf sat dazed and injured among the force. Keel scratches his face as he thought, musing that perhaps he should have held back a little more. Her expression etched with deep concern, Marsyria could only remain silent. She questioned why someone so powerful would be in their lands. Speaking seriously, she commanded everyone to immediately keep their distance from the area. The elves reacted with surprise, internally crying out for their queen. Marsyria's urgent shout was a clear command for immediate action. Marsyria internally urged everyone to run, prompting the villagers to swiftly respond in compliance. The villager swiftly runs away. Lowering her gaze in defeat, Marsyria admitted Keel's overwhelming strength. Yet, shouting in anger, she vowed inwardly that he would never reach his goal. He gave a faint smile, explaining that he only wanted to talk. Surveying the chaos around him, Keel couldn't shake the feeling that this had turned into a complete disaster. Enveloped in fiery energy, she initiated a summoning ritual, commanding a horned being of pure flame to emerge and burn away the pitch-black darkness. As the horned being emerged, she stood on a structure, arms raised, surrounded by swirling fiery energy. A bowl covered in flames appeared as Marsyria called out, "Figo!" His eyes widened in sheer amazement as he realized a true summoning was underway. As Keel contemplated the horrifying and alien creatures he had encountered in the snowfield. As the fully summoned, fiery bull-like creature stood prominently, Keel thought that this was a true bull with horns ablaze in flame. Smiling, his eyes sparkling, Keel looked upwards and declared, "Now that's a spirit. Now that's fantasy." With power radiating from her, Marsyria intoned the name, Figo. Amidst a golden glow, Marsyria commanded Figo to annihilate the enemy before it. Figo internally grumbling that summoning contracts were nothing but a hassle that only brought trouble. Marsyria looked down and firmly commanded silence to Keel. Marsyria declared that Figo was the one who held flame in its horns. Marsyria explained that summoning such a prideful, high-level spirit typically exceeds her power, having only barely managed to form the contract with the aid of another tribe, and this isn't how she expected him to appear. She looked sternly, commanding Figo to fulfill its contract. Figo spoke, confirming if the contract commanded it to kill the human before it. Figo reacts with surprise, questions, and mutters, "That." Figo questioned if Keel was even human. Following the dire commands, a massive horned beast engulfed in flames emerged. Keel clasped hands, reacted with surprise, wondering if the beast was a summoned creature and if he was experiencing real fantasy. Marsyria immediately ordered Figo to attack Keel after trespassing their land. As the fiery entity declared his intent to burn his foe, Keel looked forward with a surprised expression. After the proclamation, Figo prepared himself to lunge. Figo charges forward amidst a fiery explosion. Keel appeared surprised yet determined, the air around him blurring with speed. The creature's charge unleashed a powerful explosion, sending large chunks of debris flying. Marsyria shields herself from a powerful impact, letting out a pained gasp. Marsyria's face showed startled confusion, making her wonder what was happening. A shocking reality left her speechless after seeing Keel holds Figo's horn. As the smoke faded, they witnessed Keel holding Figo's horn without ease. Amidst the billowing smoke and dust from the creature's explosion, he rose airborne, his glowing sword ready. Keel revealed he felt more at ease seeing the beast form. With his fists clenched, Keel's gaze as he appeared to power up. Marsyria's face contorted in shock as a sudden sound ripped through the air beside her. Figo and Keel clashed in fierce close-quarters combat, engulfed in a blaze. Their explosive clash culminates in an intense burst of red and orange energy radiating outwards. A powerful explosion erupted over a verdant landscape, causing a strong outward displacement. The overwhelming force of their clash culminated in a massive, bright explosion emanating from a point above the earth. The overwhelming force of their clash detonated on the verdant landscape, sending a fiery explosion ripping through the ground and flinging debris everywhere. The overwhelming force struck Marsyria, intensely impacting and throwing her amidst energy and debris as she screamed in horror. He struck with intense force, surrounded by fiery energy. As dust and debris settled around her, Marsyria knelt on the ground, her hands resting as she wondered what this was. Figo vanished to thin air after what Keel did. Keel slowly approaching Marsyria, who remained stunned and silent amidst the debris. As he stood over her, Marsyria, kneeling, desperately pleaded for her kin to be spared, then faltered. Standing over her, he declared to the elves that he was not their enemy. Her eye widened in shock after hearing what Keel just said. She could only stare in shock and voice a bewildered what. After many conversation, they finally came to accept that he wasn't their enemy. Bowing her head in apology, Marsyria remorsefully confessed to the human that they had been too quick to judge, telling him she was sorry. Holding the sleeping elf child, Keel wondered how they could have mistaken its bringer for an enemy, with Marsyria looking down in regret. She exclaimed how terribly rude they had been. Smiling gently, he reassured Marsyria that he understood they were driven there by humans, yet confessed his sadness that no one had been willing to hear him out. As she spoke with surprise, Marsyria questioned if he truly wasn't one of the humans who had been chasing them. Keel, looking slightly down, spoke, admitting this was his first time seeing an elf since there were none in the white snowfield. She reacted with stunned surprise, demanding to know what he meant by white snowfield. Marsyria's eyes widened as she asked if he was the ashen barbarian of the snowfield, and Keel confirmed that was indeed what outsiders called him. Marsyria declared that couldn't be, having thought it impossible for humans to survive in such a place. Marsyria looked concerned as she questioned if Keel's arrival from the snowfield meant others could also come from that place. Keel cryptically claimed he had no idea, adding that he doubted anyone else could emerge as he had. As the very landscape around them glitched into an abstract void, a large white serpentine creature, the unknown, ominously materialized, pondering that even the powerful were bound by the rules of the snowfield. Keel contemplated about the rules from the snowy mountain, that even dragon cannot break them, and for some reason, he was able to escape through what they call a quest. Marsyria reflected on his escape as Keel explained he alone was able to break through what was known as a quest. As Marsyria continued to reflect on the situation, Keel added that his escape must be a rare exception. Marsyria's gaze sharpened with determination. Marsyria closed her eyes, stating that what she had learned was a great relief. Marsyria inquired about her summon if it was all right. Keel awkwardly confirmed that he split it in half. Marsyria explained that there was no need to worry, as spirits were beings of nature, and the beast had merely returned to the spirit realm through reverse summoning. She apologized for her unintended rudeness, then inquired if there was anything he desired. He thoughtfully considered the revelation that it was a spirit. With a thoughtful expression, Keel then questioned if beings other than elves could form contracts with spirits. Marsyria looked worried, declaring that she didn't think such a feat was possible. With a concerned expression and a gesture, Marsyria explained that some humans deeply attuned to nature could form contracts with spirits. She then looked down, pondering if it was truly impossible. A sorrowful expression clouded Marsyria's face, her silence echoing the heavy truth. Marsyria advised Keel if he wishes to contract spirit, he must go to Elfo Sagrado. Marsyria then mused that if Elfo Sagrado truly existed, then contacting a spirit might finally be possible. He pondered if a human such as himself could even venture to the elven sanctuary. Marsyria declares that while such a journey would normally be impossible, her referral might just make it happen. She considered the elven sanctuary, Elfo Sagrado, to be the dream destination of all who study elves. As Keel confronted her, Marsyria wrestled with the thought that humans posed a grave danger to elves, who meticulously protected their life's most precious place and never revealed its location to other races, yet she was considering doing just that. She declared that she would like to believe in him. She told him to take it with him as Marsyria extended the glowing gem toward Keel. He took it and stated he would accept it gratefully, Marsyria proclaiming that even if Keel reaches the area, he will surely be tested. Marsyria confidently stated that she would pass and wished her well on her journey, to which he thankfully responded. She introduced herself as Marsyria Hashian Karusha, queen of the leaf tribe, who turns with the brown leaves, then she asked for his name. Smiling confidently, Keel introduced himself as Keel the Barbarian. Keel prepare himself, then lunge forward with full speed. Keel moved rapidly through the forest. Even though there's tree around the forest, he was able to swiftly avoid it. 2 armored guards stood alert as stomping noise approaching, prompting one to cry out in alarm that something was approaching and wondering what it could be. A guard screamed for the bell to be rung, and all forces to assemble immediately. They wait for the thing that approaching them. As the smoke fade, they saw a man with weird appearance. Because his clothes are too different from normal civilians. A strong exclamation ripped forth as one of the guards stammered, "Why you're—" Keel glanced at the bright outdoors, wondering aloud if they were guards. Then, with a broad smile, he looked straight ahead and declared, "Nice to meet you." He stood in the green field, observing 3 armored guards. As Keel's words echoed, 2 armored guards reacted with concern. One questioned the loud noise they had heard, while the other stared in shock, wondering if he was an enemy. They looked surprised, but the thing they mostly noticed was his ash hair. The male felt a surge of anxiety as he recognized a familiar scar on Keel's chest, a revelation that he struggled to believe. He slowly realized that this man is probably the one legend that had been talking about by the Emperor, the Ash Barbarian. With his identity confirmed, he took a firm step towards the guards. He pressed on, his steps firm upon the earth. As he advanced, armored guards with spears stood defensively before a castle gate, one frantically yelling for him to stop. As Keel pressed forward, one of the 3 armored knights guarding the stone wall defensively raised a sword, threatening to attack if he came any closer. He told them he hoped they would calm down, and assured the knights he was not their enemy. The guard urgently questioned what he wanted from them. He extends a hand as if reaching for something. Keel pointed the door behind them. One armored guard remained locked in a tense stare, awaiting Keel's next move. A knight turned his back to survey the distant city walls, wondering what he meant. He declared that he wanted to visit their territory. As Keel states his intentions, the two knights react with clear surprise and confusion, one of them blurting out a bewildered question. A knight demanded to know Keel's purpose in their territory, asking if he only meant to pass through. Keel replied that he wished to stay for a while if possible, though he admitted he didn't know how long that would be. A knight reacted to the notion of his stay, immediately demanding to know his name, which he introduced himself. The guards demanded an official ID or a witness to confirm his identity, but Keel curtly replied that he had neither. Then Keel remembered something. He remembered when Mylina offers a distinctive medallion, instructing him to show it to the Akasha family if he ever ventures outside and seeks them. He shows the distinctive medallion, questioning if it truly isn't enough for confirmation. With his armored collar visible, the male looked up and questioned what that was. Keel clarified to the questioning guard that the crest was from the Akasha family, and further explained that he had received it from a descendant of that bloodline. The guard immediately asked if the Akasha family was the merchant family from the kingdom of Danayan. Holding up the medallion, the guard identified the Akasha family as a merchant group that had arrived in the snowfield years ago, prompting Keel to ask if he was familiar with them. The guard explained that the family had quickly risen to prominence and expanded their influence since their head had changed a few years ago. After processing this, he asked if that was enough to confirm his identity. The guard examined the medallion with uncertainty, admitting that while it didn't seem fake, confirming his identity would still be challenging. Glancing down at a document on the table, he asked if it was not from this kingdom. He then clarified their location, stating that they were in the kingdom of Gehenthra. The guard confirmed the medallion was helpful, though not full confirmation, then permitted entry but imposed a condition. Keel looked on with a questioning expression, immediately asking about the condition. The guard looked up to state their demand for confirmation that Keel was not dangerous. The mysterious condition for his entry, laid out by the guard, was that he should have a party to prove he was no threat. Keel pondered the given condition, finding the requirement of a party far easier than he had anticipated. Keel confidently agreed, saying, "All right, I'll accept it," but quickly added that there was one more condition. The guard began explaining the new condition, stating that Keel must first clear the dungeon. He then emphasized that Keel needed to provide all the details about the dungeon clearance process. Keel processed the information, realizing the strategy was to have individuals with uncertain identities monitor each other. He then explained that the process would serve to filter out any suspicious individuals. As he continued his analysis, Keel recognized the strategy as a clever and well-conceived move. Impressed by his genius, the guard questioned if Keel was truly a barbarian. Keel responded boldly with a simple yes, then proudly declared, "I am a barbarian." A wave of surprise washed over him as he considered that he had always believed barbarians to be merely an ignorant race. Clearing his throat, the guard declared he had never met a barbarian like him, then abruptly ended the conversation and told them to leave. Tyrannus's face twisted in disgust as he let out a sharp ugh, complaining that the law was forcing him to enter a dungeon with a scoundrel who preyed on people's coin pouches. Tyrannus sat with his arms crossed, lamenting the situation as what a sad story. Appearing distressed and annoyed, Hack demanded to know why the old man was picking another fight, asking if he was just taking his anger out on him because a thief had scammed him and taken all his money. Tyrannus continued his tirade against Hack, angrily shouting how a common thief dared to insult a holy knight. With a smirk, Hack brazenly dismissed Tyrannus's claim of being a holy knight, scoffing and questioning whether a real one would wear such armor or be in their current situation. Hack teased Tyrannus that he was the same kind of bug as him. As Tyrannus gripped the hilt of his sword, Hack continued his taunts, scoffing. "Tyrannus? What kind of stupid last name is that?" Tyrannus had enough and pulled his sword to confront Hack. He made fun of Tyrannus while his dagger resting on his lap as he boldly questioned if Tyrannus wanted a fight. Hack pressed on with his taunts, mockingly asking if Tyrannus truly believed his tattered armor would protect him. However, someone came to stop them from their childish acts. Kaloja sat in contemplative concern, silently questioning if clearing a dungeon with her current companions would truly be all right. She remained deep in thought, clearly weighing the implications of their impending dungeon challenge. A woman with light brown hair looked down at a door knocker on a wooden door. Afterwards, the guard finally came in and announced that the last person have arrived. As Keel came inside the room, they were speechless by his appearance. Keel smiled, greeting everyone by asking if they were his party members. They were surprised for being massive, wondering if he's really a human. Even Hack get intensified by the immense pressure given by Keel. He smiles and introduces himself, boldly stating, "Nice to meet you." He smiles and gestures, showcasing his powerful build to his new party members. The guard instructed the assembled group to introduce themselves to each other, and he will be back in a moment. Keel initiated the introductions by boldly proclaiming himself a barbarian and revealing his name. Keel then prompted him to introduce himself, to which Kassan Hack hesitantly proclaimed himself a thief. Alessandro Tyrannus, a holy knight, cleared his throat and proudly introduced himself. Keel then asked if the holy knight used holy power, prompting him to explain he was a special kind of holy knight who could not wield it. The nun introduced herself as a priest of Colossia, the god of lies and deception, Hayes. Keel asked the priest, questioning if she was uncertain despite she's a priest. She hesitantly revealed her deity was Colossia, the god of lies and deception, admitting that the god she served wasn't highly regarded. Keel simply acknowledged her explanation. Later on, the guard came back to notify them. The guard commanded them to depart if they were ready. Keel looked forward with Tyrannus behind him, yet he remained silent. Therefore, they prepare themselves to depart. The guard announced their arrival. Keel were surprised of where they are. The group arrived at a dungeon entrance as the guard announced it was the very gateway to their challenge. The guard declared their challenge was a 3-floor dungeon, and Keel, Tyrannus, Hack, and Colligia were all surprised to hear that undead monsters appeared there. With the group now facing the blazing dangers of the dungeon's initial floor, critical details about their trial emerged. Keel determined, ready for the fiery challenge ahead. Keel wasted no time, immediately asking for the strategy to be explained. Hack began outlining the plan, but Keel swiftly cut him off, insisting he drop the "sir," since they were companions, which elicited a burst of laughter. Hack cleared his throat, preparing to explain the strategy. He quickly explained the strategy, assigning Keel and the warrior to form the front line, while the Colossia interjected that he would handle checking for traps. Hack detailing the priestess's role to provide divine power support from the rear, then asked for their feedback. Keel affirmed his understanding of the strategy as Hack erupted into awkward laughter. With their strategy confirmed, Keel declared it was time to go. They immediately found themselves peering down into a dark, cavernous abyss. Colossia expressed her concern about the cavern's impenetrable darkness and the complete absence of common traps or switches. But suddenly, Hack noticed something unusual. He turns his head, sensing a monster, and urgently warns the group to halt, declaring it a monster. He pointed out the bone fragments on the floor, explaining that they were skeleton remains, and warned the group not to get any closer, or they would reanimate and attack. Hack reflected on the dungeon's true purpose, confirming his suspicion that the guard captain had known all along that the dungeon was not just a test of sincerity, but a calculated tool designed to eliminate troublesome outsiders from the very beginning. He looked surprised, processing the grim revelation about the skeletons as he uttered, "Skeletons, huh?" Hack, his expression serious, further warned that skeletons are quite strong monsters. Hack grimly declared that the dungeon was far more difficult than he had first believed, warning that the skeleton warriors' considerable bone defense meant they would have to keep moving and fighting despite any wounds or lost limbs. Hack urgently instructed the surprised Colossia to prepare her divine power, while also telling Tyrannus to ready his shield and Keel to get prepared for the looming threat. He then issued a focused strategic declaration, stating he would aim for openings during the fight. As Hack revealed his tactical insights, he warned that the skeletons' bodies can be destroyed, but they will continue to move unless they are precisely struck in the neck, and their resilient forms require multiple hits to be defeated. Keel agreed, proclaiming his understanding and praising Hack as a good leader. As they continue their way, a menacing grin spread across the skeleton warrior's face, accompanied by an unsettling sound. This surprised Keel as it began to stand up. The skeleton warriors gazed menacingly to their group. Tyrannus held his shield with determined resolve, while Colossia channeling her holy magic and Hack positioned himself from incoming attack. However, Keel took the front line, aiming to slap the skeleton. As the skeleton warrior lunges at Keel easily strike it with bare hands, leaving him and the others startled from what he just did. Keel smirked and complimented Hack for being a genius by telling if the skeleton warriors had no head, they aren't able to move. With a surprised and slightly unhinged expression, Hack was left speechless since that's not what he meant when he explained it earlier. It was revealed that dungeons were the source of the skeleton's power, granting them unnatural and formidable durability. Because of this, their bones were incredibly tough and difficult to cut. The precise method for defeating these resilient creatures was to strike their crucial weak points. Hack inwardly recognized that while he had known of his companion's strength, its astonishing magnitude truly surprised him. Treacherous, Hack, and their companion looked down at a pile of white powder from the skeleton warrior's bone. Keel declared they should keep going. As Hack stood behind them, Treacherous, speaking anxiously, looked unconcerned while Kaloja declared her understanding. Treacherous looked to the side as Hack stood closely behind him, possibly with a weapon. As everything went deeper, Keel noticed something unusual at their surroundings. He saw another human skull lay on the rocky ground. They wonder what's with Keel. Just a sudden, the skeletal remains starts to move along with a torn red cloth and a sword. Kaloja's eyes widened in profound surprise. Hack looked determined as he declared, "This time it's real." So he ordered everyone to prepare themselves from incoming attack. Keel asking for a favor, which caused Hack, Kaloja, and Treacherous to stare in surprise, with Kaloja exclaiming, "Yes." Keel volunteered to face the skeletons alone, explaining he needed to check some things, and Hack, Treacherous, and Kaloja all swiftly agreed to his proposal. He smirked while Keel offered his thanks. He was about to get attacked by the skeleton warrior with a sword. Treacherous, Hack, and Kaloja observed, with Hack wondering what Keel was trying to do. He smiled, broadly finding the structure interesting as he questioned its nature. As Keel prepared for battle, a skeleton warrior stood ready, its sword preparing to swing to Keel. However, as the sword landed, Keel easily catches it with his finger. Keel confronted the skeleton warrior, if what it is going to do now. Even though the sword has been cut by Keel, the skeleton warrior prepared to strike again. The skeleton warrior lunges forward. Keel left unfazed by its sudden attack. Keel reacted with a surprise and dodged the skeleton warrior's strike. While the skeleton warrior was off guard, he took the opportunity to grab its hand. He smirked as he had idea. He pulled its hand and crushed it to the ground. He looked wide-eyed and surprised as its bone turned to dust. The skeleton appeared utterly confused, with question marks seemingly hovering around its head. The skeleton fixed an intense gaze from its skull. Skeleton warrior stomped the sword to fly above him and took it immediately to his another hand. Keel smiled broadly, exclaiming with a laugh that his opponent could switch hands too. The skeleton warrior lunged forward. He then swiftly parried the skeletal warrior's attack by grabbing its hand. The skeletal figure recoiled from the impact. Yet the skeleton warrior didn't stop and lunges once again. He stood firm as the skeletal warrior goes to strike again. With a menacing smile, he shattered the skeleton warrior's hand, declaring that its intelligence was surprisingly high for its ability to substitute. Kaloja groaned in distress, clamping a hand over her mouth. Hack and Treacherous reacted with fear and distress. Keel, clutching a broken bone, radiated an intimidating aura as he was proclaimed a true barbarian. Seeing what Keel did to the skeleton warrior, Hack was left speechless, his own eyes wide with shock. All it left from the skeleton warrior was its skull. Keel gazed in furious. Standing over the skull with a fixed gaze, he declared that one could still move with just a head. Keel smiles and gestures, asking if they have been waiting long, and apologizing for the delay. Hack furiously declared that he could do whatever he desired. Therefore, Keel said they have to get going again, which they immediately agreed. Upon arriving, Hack recognized the place. The group hears Hack declare their arrival on the second floor. Keel, Treacherous, and Kaloja stood with focused expressions, ready for the challenges of the second floor. Hack exhales with a relieved sigh. Hack hesitantly suggested they take a short rest. Keel responded thoughtfully, agreeing that a rest would be a good idea, and then Hack expressed his thanks. Keel rested peacefully with his eyes closed. Even after their brief respite, Hack, Treacherous, and the rest were clearly uneasy. Keel broke the silence, immediately posing questions about the dungeon. As he questioned the dungeon, she and Treacherous listened, prompting her to inquire if he needed something. He smiled slightly as he humbly confessed his significant lack of knowledge regarding the dungeon. Looking flustered, she covered her mouth, quickly exclaiming that wanting to learn was a great attitude, even if she herself didn't know much. Kaloja questioning him, as she inquired what he was curious about. He curious that the dungeon was quite close to the territory. So Keel questioned if there was no problem with dungeons and monsters nearby. Kaloja explained that while dungeon monsters generally stay inside, any exceptions are always checked and dealt with beforehand. Hack closed his eyes in contemplation, clearing his throat to gather his composure to talk. He explained that dungeons occur naturally, sometimes forming as caves and other times manifesting as immense towers. Hack added that most dungeons tend to materialize near highly populated areas. Keel finally understand about this place. As Kaloja listened attentively, she explained that when a dungeon appeared, the territory would check its danger level, and then outsiders like themselves, mercenaries, or guards would deal with it. As Keel, Kaloja, and Tyrannus sat on the ground, Keel questioned if dungeons truly never appeared within their territory. Kaloja explained that they always appear a certain distance away from populated areas, a fact Keel readily grasped. Keel confidently smiled, questioning if a successful dungeon raid would indeed yield a reward. She explained that defeating a dungeon boss, especially one of this level, would grant various and pretty good rewards. Keel realized this world is like a fantasy game. Confused by his remark, Kaloja questioned if what he meant of game, only for him to casually dismiss it as talking to himself. With a serious expression, he then declared he had one more question which she let him. When Keel asked who made dungeons, Kaloja left dumbfounded from his question. Still surprised, she explained that dungeons naturally occur and are not created by anyone. She added that the whole situation seemed strange in too many ways, asserting that the dungeons appear near concentrated populations, as if specifically meant for investigation, a point Hack affirmed by confirming their proximity to human dwellings. Pondering the dungeon's true nature, Keel realized how it lured people with rewards, concluding it felt far too man-made to be a natural occurrence. She reacted with surprise and acknowledged the truth in his words. She looked thoughtful, realizing she had never considered his point about the dungeon's true nature because it seemed so obvious, leaving her speechless. Looking down, Hack admitted that he had never considered this perspective before. He grappled internally with the revelation that he had never questioned what he always considered an obvious truth, wondering if Keel, this barbarian, was actually challenging such an undeniable principle. Hack had a stereotype about barbarians to be an ignorant and savage race. Hack continued his condemnation, labeling barbarians cruel beings without blood or tears. Hack's unyielding declaration that the barbarian fact hadn't changed echoed in his mind, along with a thought that if his knowledge was right. Hack wrestled with the profound question, could Keel truly be a normal barbarian? All of a sudden, Hack got startled as Keel said, "This is interesting." He followed up with a question if everyone had enough rest. They hesitantly agreed. Keel declares, "Then let's get going again," prompting the group's united affirmation. The group now stood together, exploring the depths of the dungeon. Led by Keel, the group continued their journey deeper into the dark, rocky cave. Keel's eye widened. A golden chest caught his attention. As Tyrannus, Hack, and Keel gathered around the chest, Hack confirmed it was a treasure chest, a reward from the maze itself. Hack's resignation is immediately challenged by Keel's command. Despite Hack's conclusion that the treasure chest is an impossible find for someone of his skill level, he is now being directly ordered to do the very thing he just gave up on. This creates a clear conflict between Hack's logic and Keel's demand. His eyes widened in confusion as he uttered a puzzled query. Keel continues to apply pressure, cornering Hack by confirming they have a treasure chest and then directly challenging him for being thief. Hack's discomfort and his hesitant but reveal his inner conflict and his clear reluctance to accept the role Keel is forcing upon him. Keel pressed Hack to unlock the chest, declaring it a thief's duty, explaining his reasoning that he would finally witness a thief's skills firsthand. He inwardly conceded that while Keel's reasoning wasn't wrong, a significant problem clearly emerged. Hack's face contorted in distress as he inwardly declared that if he could do that, he wouldn't even be here. Hack screamed in frustration from his thought, inwardly declaring that a petty thief unrecognized by the Thieves' Guild wouldn't possess such picking skills. But he inwardly admitted he couldn't reveal the truth. Hack's internal conflict is now on full display, creating a clear contrast between his outward appearance and his true feelings. Consumed by Keel's look of anticipation, he puts on a false front of excitement while internally worrying that the reality of his own limitations will only lead to disappointment. Hack's worst fears are confirmed as he imagines Keel's disappointment and judgment. Keel, with a stern expression and intense gaze, silently deems Hack useless, solidifying the tension between them and signaling a clear breakdown in their relationship. His face contorted in distress, his eyes squeezed shut as he cried out in shock. While he was getting internally tortured, he announced he would give it a try. Keel's attitude shifts from silent judgment to vocal intrigue as they observe a specific tool Hack is using. At the same time, the stakes for Hack have been raised to the highest level, as he grimly realizes that his survival now depends entirely on his success. It turns out that Hack is just a porter a long time ago, and he tried to remember the skill he saw from the real thief. Hack is now consumed by a wave of intense pressure as he fights to recall a forgotten technique. Despite his visible distress, he focuses all of his will on the chest, desperately urging the memory to resurface. This struggle highlights his grim commitment to the life-or-death stakes he now faces.